Hi, I'm Carolyn Kallenborn, and I'm here with Miriam Campos and Paula Fuentes. And we were going to talk to you about an exhibition we did at the Edgewood College Gallery in Madison, Wisconsin, called Reciprocidad. We worked together with two other artists who we'll introduce later on. And the five of us are from Oaxaca, Mexico. Some are here, have moved here later in our lives, and some were born here. But we've all been profoundly influenced by the local culture here. And in particular, there's this concept of Guelaguetza, in which there is giving and receiving that happens a lot, and it plays a really critical role in creating and maintaining the community here. And for those of you who don't know, Oaxaca is in southern Mexico, about halfway down between Mexico City and Guatemala. It's a very mountainous region. It's a full state. And then there's the city of Oaxaca, which is in the middle, and the capital, and which is where we all live here or very near here, the five of us. And one of the things that's interesting about Oaxaca is that it's very remote, both as a state and a city. So, like mass manufacturing never really took off here. There's not big factories here. It's just too hard to get materials and goods in and out. So there's still a very strong tradition of handmaking and hand processes, both within the city and within the communities around. So every piece you see in this exhibition was a collaboration, and we wanted to work together in community with kind of a common voice rather than calling out our individual identities. But I think in order to understand what happened in the collaboration, it's interesting to find out who we each are as individuals when we work by ourselves. And then you'll see what happens when we all work together. So we're going to introduce ourselves here. So I'm Carolyn Kallenborn. I'm a professor emerita from UW, University of Wisconsin-Madison. I was also on the faculty of the Kansas City Art Institute for 7 years. I recently retired and moved to Oaxaca after spending more than 20 years coming down here and working with artists and artisans in many different ways. Made a film, Woven Lives, in 2010, and I continue to work with the same people who were highlighted in that film. A lot of my work, I do dye work, installation, I work with metals. I particularly like to do installations where I can change the feel of a space and kind of get people to take both an intake of breath when they walk in, and then also like have them feel like they're in a different world for at least this moment while they're in this space. So sometimes I do this in galleries, sometimes it's part of set designs. And recently when I purchased my house here, I did a whole redo, and I feel like it's kind of an art installation that I now get to live in.
Hello, I'm Miriam Campos. I'm an artist embroidery from San Antonio Castillo Velasco. I have the pleasure to know some of you, and for those who don't know Ruiz's town, my town is about 20 miles away from the south of the Oaxaca city, which is the capital of the state. And I consider myself one of the most luckiest woman in the world, I guess, because I belong to a family. Who is this? This is the picture of my family. And mainly we are composed by women. My mom have 4 sisters, and I have another cousin. So in totality, this is mainly a woman family and a family business too, because this is the type of embroidery that we used to make in my community. That picture is a very old blouse. Can you hear me? Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Okay. One of my developed has an artist embroidery textile. It becomes after I met Ana Paula, actually, when she was the director of the Museum Textile, and after I met Carolyn too, more than 10 years ago, and we started working together as a team. But separate from that, I also experiment with some other pieces, not just the traditional embroidery that we made in my village. So I express myself and other kind of sculpture, textile pieces, and also from pieces for collaborative projects or would involve not just this team, also other members of my community and my family. And that is a little bit about me.
Hi everyone, I'm Ana Paula Fuentes. I'm a social designer, photographer, and I have the great opportunity to create and found the Textile Museum of Oaxaca in 2008. And that's where I met Carolyn and Miriam. And since then, we've been collaborating in many different projects. I am not a maker, so you will think, well, so what am I doing in this exhibition if I'm not a textile maker? I am a textile designer, but let's say the way I express myself is through photography. And I've been collaborating with many cooperatives, artisans in Oaxaca and in other states. So what I do is I connect artisans with the outside world, with designers, educational institutions, cultural institutions. So I am a social weaver, let's say. So that's what I do. And in this exhibition, I put myself out through my photographs. And so that's me. And these are some of the photos with the artisans. And the other thing that I do, and that I do together also with Carolyn and Miriam, is that we run cultural tours. And so we've been doing this. I've been doing this for almost 14 years. And recently I started doing this with Carolyn and Miriam. And this is another way of weaving community and weaving relationships, because we love to receive people from other countries to come to Oaxaca to learn about our culture and to share our passion for what people here make and also what we've been learning from them. So this is also part of our giving and receiving, let's say, practice in our daily lives here in Oaxaca. And then I'm going to introduce the two other people who collaborated with us in this exhibition, but they are not here, and they actually couldn't go to Madison to the exhibition. And one of them is Alejandro Jimenez Molina. He's from Oaxaca City, and he's a master puppet maker. He lived in Italy for many years, and he learned the art of creating sculptures with, well, puppets with wood. He uses cedar mainly, and he has a studio in Oaxaca, and he's like a genius of creating these animated characters. And so he participated in the exhibition with amazing pieces that you will see afterwards. And the other person is Tito Mendoza, who is a master weaver from Teotitlán del Valle. Tito is a Zapotec man from this beautiful town where people are specialized in weaving tapestry with wool. But Tito has gone like beyond of what everybody makes in this community. He has sophisticated the technique, and he has made amazing pieces who have been shown internationally, and also collaborated with Carolyn and with us in many other projects. So we were the 5 people who were lucky to participate in this exhibition. And now Carolyn is going to continue telling us about the exhibition.
So this project, Reciprocity, grew from an earlier exhibition that we had at the School of Human Ecology at UW-Madison called Intercambios. It's a project that we did during the pandemic. We had collaborations set up between 4 artists in Madison, 2 professors and 2 recent grad students, and 6 traditional artisans in Oaxaca. And we had originally planned to meet in person, but the pandemic came up. And so instead we wound up like going on Zoom and doing kind of like speed dating, and each artist telling about their own work and seeing what the other does, and then seeing who wanted to work together and what kind of themes they shared and what they wanted to create. So we had the show in Madison. The work was really beautiful. It had a wonderful response to that. that we had printmakers collaborating with embroiderers. We had 2 musicians, a printmaker who's also a musician who wanted to collaborate with another musician. We had installations, photographer, and weavers. And it was very profound experience, I think, for all of us. And then last spring, the Oaxaca Lending Library asked us to do a presentation on this exhibition. And David Wells, who is the gallery curator at Edgewood College Gallery, happened to be visiting at the time, and he saw the 3 of us, Anna and Miriam and myself, present on this project, and he was so excited, and he recognized our enthusiasm for it so much that about a month later he called up and he said, I'd really like you guys to do a show here at Edgewood. So that was just a really amazing opportunity to be able to know we had a beautiful space to work in and support to be able to do that. And we could really sit and talk about what is it that, that we want to talk about. And at the time that this request came through from David, we were in the middle of a pretty severe drought right here. It was affecting everything we were doing every day. And we decided that that's something we need to talk about. So the other thing that came to mind right away is we'd all been reading this book, Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. And she has a really interesting perspective because she was brought up Potawatomi and learned from her elders about the natural world, about the interactions between all parts of nature and human and nature. And then she also went on to study biology and is actually a biology professor. And so what's interesting is she's able to make connections between the storytelling way of understanding the world and this scientific way of understanding the natural world. And in both of these things, she's able to really clearly explain the complexity and the reciprocity that happens within nature and how giving and taking are a natural part of the world. And we found that some of these things were really in line with what we see and how we understand the way much of the culture, especially in the smaller villages, is here in Oaxaca, and in particular, the idea of Guelaguetza.
Guelaguetza was another of our main inspiration for develop this exhibit, because Guelaguetza nowadays means like a festival on this most popular way to know this word. But actually, it's not just this festival which occur in July. It's more about the relationship between people, and doesn't need to be like an obligation. I don't like to say that, because Guelaguetza is something that you can give to someone, but also free to ask. So Guelaguetza means that you can receive help, but also to get help, and also be able to receive not just in something that is material, because mainly we use this word for receive material things, like if you have a wedding or any type of celebration, you can receive some bread or tortillas or corn or whatever you need to host that many people in your house or for a funeral. So Guelaguetza is also the way that you can serve to your community to restore something that you need to use there. So all of this mutual help and relationship between the people who we live here, this is the real meaning of Guelaguetza. Like you can see here, some people are just passing by some food and to attend the guest for a calenda, and there's also, if there's another type of community celebration, like is the Palm Sunday in my community, you also need to receive some help and to offer some help to the mayordomo, which are the major person who runs in this type of celebrations, but also could apply for a small group, as you can see this in the last picture here. A short group of us, we are developed a workshop that was like a test for one of our trips that we are developed during these recently days. So if you need to taste something, we are, Tito was free to ask us if we can be like
Guinea pigs.
Yes, something like that. But it was in a funny way, and even if it's involved for us to time to get to there to Teotitlán, it was also that we receive a free class. So it's a win-win relationship mainly, but not focus on win something. It's just about focus to exchange and to trust in some way you can return in a certain way whatever you give away. So that's one of our main inspiration for this exhibit. And also think about that. We start thinking about the milpa system, which is actually one of the most important crops for our American native indigenous groups here. So milpa system, it's called the Three Sister, actually also in this book of Breeding Sweetgrass. And we call the Three Sisters because there's a relation between squash, beans, and corn, because the corns need the shadow of the squash at the beginning to keep the humidity in the soil. The beans need the tall of the corn to grow up and rise sunlight, and also in exchange, the beans give nitrogen to the soil. And so all of them are in certain way giving something and receiving something to the all of these trees, main plants. But it's actually not just tree plants in these crops. There's some more others that we call quelites, which are like kind of herbs. And that's fine. Actually, that's the next slide show us a corn that we used to see in the States. Once I have the chance to go with Carolyn through the States, and I was very surprised to see miles and miles of just corn and even not humans there, which was kind of very impressive for me because I'm used to see this other time of picture, like when the milpa actually, that you can see flowers in there, weeds that Carolyn used to call them before she knows that she's arquelites.
They're really delicious to eat, the calites, but we thought, yeah.
Yeah, Ana Paula, Alejandro, Tito, and I, we used to eat this all the time. So for us, it's not a surprise. But now that we are in touch with other type of people that comes from some cities, from some other countries, and then used to eat this type of herbs, which, well, that is when we recognize that actually it's not a common thing to do it. And for us that have been growing in this way is very common and very natural. But sometimes we tend to forget these roots and these things that develop like now are like a surprise thing or I know of weird maybe, but actually is the way that we used to do. So that's why we tried all of these thoughts. That's the things that we try to recover from our memories, and things like this is not just the three sisters, the milpa. There's also another very important sister, which are the fourth sister, and it's humans. We are the other part of these systems. We are not separated from the rest of the world. We are part of the world, and we need to remember this all the time. So based on all of these things, with this, we developed the concept of this exhibit, and before that, based on that, we start to construct the pieces and the arrangement and all the idea about reciprocity.
So one of the stories we thought was important to tell was the story of Sky Woman, as told in Braiding Sweetgrass. So according to this origin story of the Potawatomi, the world was formed when this beautiful woman came down from the sky. She's called Sky Woman. And the birds saw her like falling, and they were afraid she was going to hurt herself. So they ran over and they caught her and they carried her flying, and after a while they were getting tired and they knew they had to put her down. They couldn't hold her forever. So they looked around and they found a tortoise shell in the middle of the water, and they set her down on top of the tortoise shell. Once she was on the tortoise shell, the animals realized they needed to find earth. So a number of them tried to swim down to the bottom of the lake to bring dirt back, and none of them were successful. And finally, at the end, the muskrat was able to bring some up, but he was down there so long that he actually wound up dying in the process. But his sacrifice of going down so deep to get it brought back that handful of dirt that allowed the earth to be formed. And once the earth was there, Sky Woman pulled seeds and other things from her hair that allowed all of the plants and the plant life and the rest of life to happen on that surface. So in this story, this origin story, it's a world that was co-created with nature and humans together, which is very different than the story of Adam and Eve, where the world was created apart and then humans were set there to either care for it or lord over it. And I think that distinction of like how we began and how the world began is a very powerful metaphor for how we think about ourselves and our relationship to the environment. So in this piece, La Milpa, it also addresses the symbiotic relationships between the corn, beans, and squash and humans that Miriam was talking about, each one giving and receiving at exactly the time when things are needed. The weaving and installation on this piece is a collaboration that Tito, Mendoza, and I did several years ago about the cycles of nature. And as you can see here, the puppets weren't originally part of this piece. But for the milpa, we had to add the humans. It's the humans that plant the corn, the beans, and the squash all at the same time, all in the same hole. And if the humans didn't do that, there wouldn't be any milpa, there wouldn't be any Three Sisters. So we are very much a part of that process. And for me, artistically, this piece that I had done with Tito, the weaving, changed entirely by adding the puppets into this. It's like the weaving feels just much larger and much more encompassing in relation to the scale of the human figures that are there. In addition, then there's the space underneath the humans, underneath the fields, which is showing the aquifer, the water, which is a really essential for any life to continue. And what's interesting is rural communities here are really thinking about aquifers and thinking about them being empty because of our drought and what we need to fill them. And they're experimenting with water harvesting and other ways to catch rainwater with the sole purpose to seep it back into the natural aquifers so it can feed wells and rivers, and really thinking about what we can do to give back to the aquifer and not just be taking from it. And also really interesting is that just recently, in the last 10 years or so, in a cave about 45 minutes away from here, they found the world's oldest cultivated or domesticated corn, and it's from like 10,000 years ago. And it was also found with beans and squash seeds next to it too. So that means that people in these valleys right here where I am have been like feeding the whole population, which was pretty big at times, for 10,000 years with this system. And they haven't been exhausting the soil, and they haven't drained out all of their water systems either. So there's really a lot to learn from this milpa system.
Yes. Okay. So, well, as Carolyn mentioned, water was one of the main topics that we wanted to bring into the exhibition because of not just in Oaxaca, but in the whole world, we are having droughts and water shortages are not theoretical problems. I mean, this is something that in Oaxaca, especially, we're conscious about it every day in everything we do. So we know that without water, nothing else is possible. So this piece, it's a collective work, and it's El Agua Habla in Spanish. And this is an invitation to celebrate water as a giver of life, and the need to stop and listen to what water needs from us. So the first piece was made by Alejandro and Carolyn. And what Alejandro wanted to bring with this piece is, well, it's a sign language. He carved the hands because also Alejandro, he loves hands, and this is one of his hallmarks. You say like he makes a lot of hands, so he wanted
It's a specialty, yeah.
It's a specialty. So the next one, Carolyn. So this is a piece, and I don't know if you can read what it says, but it says water. So the idea was also how nature is speaking to us in a different language, not in the usual way that we are used to it. So this was an invitation to stop and try to be very conscious about what water wants to tell us. And so the other piece that was part of this collective work was, well, as I am a photographer and I'm not, I don't do embroidery or I don't weave and I don't do sculpture. I take photographs. So I invited Carolyn and Miriam actually to create a collaborative piece of work where I can put some photographs and then to be like stitched and to create pieces that could express what water, like our response to water. No, so I selected a bunch of photos that were that water is there in many different formats, like drops, rivers, the sea, no, or actually like dirty water as well. They chose some photos, and then each Carolyn and Miriam did 5 and 5. And so the idea was to see the macro and the micro representations of water. And so this was also like an invitation. Well, Carolyn and Miriam intervenir, how to say intervene?
We responded to it.
Yeah, no, but I mean the word
yeah, intervened
was not only like on the front of the piece. Normally, if you go to a gallery or to a museum, you see a photograph and that's it, the front of the photograph. But here the idea was to create a piece where you can see both sides and to see the surface and the process and to see the stitches and also to appreciate all the hard work that, when someone embroider to, no? So the idea was to see both sides of the pieces. And then Carolyn, the next one, please. And so the pieces were hanging from the ceiling, and you can go through the photos, and so you can really appreciate the whole piece. So when the students at the exhibition were like asking, why you chose this photograph, or why you chose this hand-dyed fabric, or why you did this. So it was really interesting. Like each piece has a different story. And so here we wanted the water to speak, no? Take care of me, be conscious about how you use me. So this is also a reciprocity practice. If we don't take care of water, water won't give us life. So it is a very, very like clear, for us, a clear concept of giving and receiving. And then the next piece, the name of this piece is Marking Time. And so in the gallery, at the back of the gallery, there was a wall, and there was a projection of many different photographs, my photographs. And so here, the idea was to reflect the belief that regardless of the amount of time that we are alive, that we have the opportunity to bring joy and make meaningful contributions to the world around us. So the idea was to be projecting these photographs that mark the different, let's say, like periods of time. In the lifetime of a mountain, all of humanity is no more than a blink of an eye. And in a human lifespan, the life of a flower or water drop is brief. So it's very relative. Time is very relative. So the invitation was, Carolyn, the next one, to sit in this quilting frame that belongs to Carolyn's grandmother. We put it not in the middle of the gallery, but in the back part of the gallery. And so people could sit in the benches and grab some fabric pieces, stitch them, and write on the fabric what people would like to give to the world. If I want to give hope, if I want to give wisdom, if I want to give whatever you wanted to give, you can write it down and then put that fabric on this quilting, in this fabric in the quilting frame, and stitch it. And so it was let's say this piece is interactive, but it's again a reminder of how you can give yourself in a very brief time or in a long time, but whatever the time, you need to be conscious that whatever you bring should be meaningful for the rest of the people that you are interacting with. So again, during the exhibition was really interesting to see the students sitting there and talking to each other and taking the time to sit and watch the photographs. So yeah, that was part of the, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, another piece that we have the chance to present in this exhibit is this set of three panels, which is called Cempasúchil. And this was because we have very blessed to receive this invitation, but the time that we have to present the pieces and be on time for the opening, it was too short. So we didn't have enough time to prepare all the pieces that we present in this exhibit. So we need to decide for some other pieces that we already have, but we have the great blessing that we have been working together for a very long time. So one of these other pieces that we choose for this exhibit is this one, because this piece talks about cycles of life and death. And this is also about the reciprocity between humans in this life world and to the other world, which has Mexican culture. You know, we have Day of the Dead, and this is this relationship with our loved ones who has passed away. And even if they are not here, we truly believe that they have the chance to come once a year, or at least we bring them once a year and remember them with all this beautiful flower, which is the cempasúchil, because the flower gives us this amazing smell and the color to guide our loved ones to here. But we also are related to in some other levels, like with the fossils, because this panels also present some fossils that Carolyn get inspiration in a mountain in Argentina, in this high desert in the top of the mountain, which is in a creature of the sea who has living in 1,000 of years ago and suddenly came on the top of a mountain. And that are actually also some creatures that we can find in the valleys of Oaxaca. And it's also very important for represent our ceremonies in our state, because with this shell, the concheros produce a special sound to call the good spirits, or to call for these main ceremonies. So there are a lot of hiding relationships between different type of things, like some creatures who lives in the bottom of the sea a long time ago disintegrated and give minerals to the flowers to grow and develop another shared life, but also related with death and the life actually, or there's thousands of explanation or relation hidden that we can explain through these pieces that we really think that it fits perfectly in this whole concept of reciprocity. That's what we decided to put this into this gallery to kind of being a part of this same cycle or same space to try to exchange this idea with the persons, to the people who attend this exhibit. So that's why we chose this. And here you can see some details between the stitches and the representation of the fossils and the dyeing fabric and threads.
Mm-hmm. And then the last piece in the show is one called Species Arrogance. And this came about because Alejandro, we were talking and Alejandro said, I'd like to make a Narcissus. And I think we were a little bit like, well, how does that fit with all of this? And that's from Greek, and we're talking about things in the Americas and things. And he said, no. He said, I don't want to make Narcissus, the Greek Narcissus. I want to make a contemporary Narcissus and talk about like the disconnect between humans and the world and the disconnect to nature. So he made this really amazing piece with a man caught up with himself and admiring himself on his cell phone. And we decided this was just exactly the right piece for the show, because when we put it here, not just to talk about sort of egotistical individuals, but how we as a species have really become very arrogant. We're like so enamored with our own creations, technology, art, science, consumer goods, philosophy, all these, which are wonderful things too. But we've got so caught up in thinking about how wonderful it is, all of the things that we're doing, that we sort of lost connection to nature, and we've forgotten all that we're getting from nature, and we sometimes don't see the beauty of it because we're caught up in our own minds and in our own creations. And we've really lost perspective on what we're giving back to nature, which is mostly a lot of trash and destruction. And one of our main questions in this exhibition is, how can we begin to see ourselves as part of nature and part of the cycles that are much bigger than us? The cycles that have been here long before us and will be here long after us. We think it's really important that as a species that we pay attention to and appreciate and learn from nature. We breathe out carbon dioxide and the trees take it in and give back the oxygen we need. And we do this, and the trees do this without expectation or payment. And giving and receiving freely are what keeps the world in movement. And when you look at any one part of nature, a rock or a tree, a river, or a drop of water, it'll teach you about time and evidence of history. And nature has its own language, and we need to observe and use all of our senses to listen so that we can recognize the interconnections both above and below and before and after that allow these cycles to continue. Like the roots of a plant, things that are unseen are often essential. And nature will teach us that existence itself is a constant state of giving and receiving. Thank you.